Welcome. This is the second time we've tried giving this session. Our initial intent was to have an entire technology track with a bunch of presentations that a lot of people wouldn't and completely follow. One thing I really enjoy going to conferences, scientific conferences, is going into a presentation and walking out a little bit confused. And we were thinking, well, it'd be nice if we had a session kind of like that where you feel like you've been stretched a little bit. And so that was the initial intent of this session. Some of the organizers were a bit skittish about confusing the audience, and so we compromised. So what we have is a session that's a little bit confusing, but not very, and also covers some of the unusual topics within speech recognition. And so last year we did the same thing, and the session is basically what are the things from academia that are a little bit unusual, and we've tried to focus on research and university papers and so on. And this, just for fun, I thought it'd be useful to show you some of the topics that we considered for today and also for last year. And one of them is company Voice Vibes. In fact, Deborah is sitting right there. Raise your hand. That Voice Vibes has a product that coaches public speakers, and it tells them, here's how confident you sounded, and here's how likable you are, and here's how likely people are to trust you. And they do all this by the sound of your voice.
Will we get your score at the end of this?
What's that?
Will we get your score at the end of this?
Absolutely not. A similar paper, a research project we looked at, also tells you how attractive is your voice, or how attractive do you think the speaker is based on their voice. Another research paper we looked at was social cues, like when does the other person know when they can begin speaking, and how do you cue each other in subtle ways so that you can have a conversation. And there's a lot of research that suggests that laughter is good for you. There's been some research on laughter trackers that gives you a score on here's how much you laughed. There's a lot of work on foreign language learning. How do you teach somebody to speak a language that's not their native language? It's tricky because if a speech recognizer is making errors, or if it's getting the pronunciation wrong and you're getting the pronunciation wrong, then who is right? But there's been a lot of progress there. Things like remote speech therapy, teaching someone who has an issue with speech, either language or just a speech impediment or other issues. Can you do that remotely? If someone is going to lose their voice through surgery, and you know that's going to happen, is there something you can do to preserve their voice so that it's captured, so that then they can use a text-to-speech synthesizer later and will sound like they used to sound? So that's another topic we considered. There's all kinds of papers on diagnosing dementia, Alzheimer's, colds, things like that through your voice, and a lot of progress has been made there. Low resource speech recognition training means that suppose there's a language that's either fairly obscure or it's not economically very interesting, so we don't have a lot of data on it. We'd like to build a speech recognizer for that language, and we don't have a lot of training data, which is an issue. And so there's things like, can you take a neighboring language and transplant what you know from that language into this low resource language? Everybody's familiar with voice prints, where you are identified by the sound of your voice. There's a lot of things you can do to spoof this, like you can make a recording of the person. And so there's this really interesting battle that has been created, which is the spoofing technologies find new and better ways to pretend like they're the person, and then there's liveness detectors that try to do a better job of figuring out, was that really you? And they both come up with some really clever methods. So that's an interesting battle we may cover someday in a future session. Speech enhancement is an old topic, which is where you take an audio signal and you try to clean it up. Except with things like adversarial training with neural networks, it has suddenly become really spectacularly good, to the extent where the first time I heard this, I thought, no, that's not even true. That's fake. It's not fake. It's just really, really good. And so there's some speech enhancement stuff that's coming out that's pretty exciting and a little bit scary. And then there's really off-the-wall, marmoset is a type of monkey. And they've been then studying using speech analysis to try to figure out what's the language component and how do marmosets put together whatever syntax it is that they have. So those are things we're not going to talk about today. Um, First of all, just as for introductions, so I'm David Thomson. I work for CaptionCall, and I've worked a lot of different places. Probably most of my career I spent with AT&T and the labs there working on speech recognition. Right now I'm with this company, and we build captioned phones for people who are hard of hearing. So if I don't hear very well and I want to call you up and talk to you, I can read what you're saying on my screen and carry on a normal conversation from your perspective, even though I don't necessarily hear everything that you say. So it's pretty nice. It makes us feel good, like we're helping people. So we like that aspect of it. The actual technology behind it is not pure ASR. It's a combination of human and ASR, and we are currently researching new ways to make that combination more effective, to make it faster, to make it better, to make it cheaper and more effective. So it's a pretty interesting topic. And I've had this line on my slide. I've been speaking at this conference, I think, for 25 years or something like that. And I've had this line on my slide, I think, every year, and that is, we're hiring. So if you're a speech expert, or if you're a machine learning expert, or a really good software programmer, then I'd really love to get your card. So let me introduce the speakers. First of all, we're going to switch the order. Have they come to work with you on your PC?
Yes,
Is it working?
they are saying it will work.
Okay. They said it'll work? You know, I want to hear it over the speakers before we actually get to that point. I'm going to give you, where's the connector? The connector's gone.
No, they're bringing it.
Oh, okay. So at some point during Yocheved's talk, you're going to hear some of Fasih's talk played over the speakers, and that's good news. That means that we can hear from him too. All right, so we're going to do in reverse order. For first speaker is Yocheved Levitan. Levitan or Levitan? I forget. Levitan. And she's going to be talking about detecting deception through text and audio. She's a natural language processing scientist with Interactions. And Interactions also, interestingly, has a human-machine hybrid that does speech recognition. She has a master's in computer science from Columbia. And then when she's finished, assuming they've got all the audio running, then we'll hear from Fasih Haider. Did I say that right? Wow, these are tough. Even though I know both of them, I still can't say their names. He's from the University of Edinburgh, and he has a PhD from Trinity in Dublin. And so we'll go ahead and make our switch. Yocheved.
So I'm Yocheved, and today I will be talking about deception detection in speech. A little bit about me. As David mentioned, I'm a natural language processing scientist at Interactions, and previously I got my master's at Columbia in computer science, where I worked as a graduate research assistant in the spoken language lab directed by Julia Hirschberg. Here's an outline of today's talk. First, we'll discuss some background, present a problem, offer some different approaches, talk about the corpus features and findings of a single approach, and then we'll wrap up. So, why is deception detection important? There are many applications. Firstly, with airline security, with detecting deception in court testimonials, just the daily news that we read every day, social media posts. We want to know whether the information that's being communicated to us is legitimate. So because this is such an important problem, there have been many research studies done using different modalities to detect deception, using a variety of biometrics like heart rate or pulse, and facial expressions, brain imaging. And then more recently, people have been looking at text approaches and speech approaches to detect deception. Here are some notable papers on the topic of detecting deception in text. So Perez Rosas and Mihalcia wrote a paper about open domain deception detection, where they studied how people lie, and they generated a corpus of data by using Mechanical Turk to collect samples of truth and of lies from different people, 7 truths, 7 lies, and they collected a data set, and then they used that to study different features that are available in the text. And Ott et al. In 2011 conducted a study of opinion spam, which is basically fake reviews. They compared generated fake reviews, also through Mechanical Turk, to truth samples, and they studied how people lie in these situations. There are lots of challenges involved with detecting deception in text. Firstly, there's a lack of data to study the way people lie. We don't always have the truth. It's very hard to know what people are comparing things with, and also when there are studies, it's very difficult to compare them with the real world. Also, there are differences in the way people lie across cultures and across gender, etc. So this is a more recent approach presented in the PhD thesis of Sarita Levitan, who happens to be my sister. And she studied deception detection in the area through the vehicle of speech. Some notable features of this work is that it offers a large-scale corpus for studying deception, multi-domain, cross cultures, across genders, also financial incentive for people who lie well and for people who deceive well, and methods for automatically extracting features and machine learning approaches for classifying deceptive speech. 3 main ideas are identifying cues to deception, studying speaker variability in the way people lie, and using this information to classify speech. A little bit more detail about the corpus, known as the CXD corpus, or the Columbia Cross-Cultural Deception Corpus. This is an overview of the experiment where it's an extension of the false resume paradigm, also known as like a lying game, where participants came into the lab and one interviewed another, asking questions where one participant was told to lie, the other was supposed to detect whether they were saying the truth or not, and they were offered money for performing well. It also included personality scores and a baseline sample of their speech to compare with. Here's an example of a questionnaire that they were given, where for half the examples they were told to fabricate a response, and then when their partner asked them, they would say the false answer. For example, do you have allergies to any foods? For that example, they would lie, and then they would have to try to get away with it. So just some other features of this corpus: 340 subjects, over 120 hours of speech, different cultures, different gender, different, also labeled with global and local deception. They studied different segments of speech, different units of speech, interpausal units, which is pause-free speech. Turns is just one speaker, but may include pauses. Question responses are those that directly follow a prompt, like, do you have allergies? So the direct response to that. And then question chunks are the total response to a given question. So once they collected all that data, they extracted different feature sets. Acoustic prosodic are the speech features. Then linguistic deception indicators are different features that are supposed to be indicative of deception, like laughter, hesitation, etc. Luke features are different dimensions of speech, like formality and punctuation. And complexity is studies the syntax of the speech, how complex it is. In total, there were 152 features studied, 3 different groups. For example, for acoustic prosodic, these are the pitch features, different measures for each. Intensity is the volume. Also, there are different measures, and voice quality. We know that people reveal themselves through their words, so it's not only useful to look at the speech sample, but to also look at the content. And that's why they used Luke to identify different features in the text, which were obtained through transcribing the audio. And these different dimensions can give us some insight into the psychological cues of the speech. Through studying this corpus and the different features that they extracted, these were some of the findings that they saw. In deceptive speech, there was increased pitch and increased volume, lack of speech planning, detailed speech, whereas with truthful, there was indication of cognitive process and function words that were used. So these were useful features for distinguishing between truth and falsehood. With these results, seeing that there are features that we can use to distinguish between true and false statements, they looked at the different feature sets and relative to the units of speech, and these are some of the results. So on the x-axis are the different feature sets and different combinations, and on the y-axis is the F1 score, which is a measure of precision and recall. So for the interpausal units, you see that the performance isn't that great, just above chance. Looking at longer segments of speech, performance increases, and then there's a big jump when they looked at the question responses, which include even more context. So, and finally, question chunks gave the highest performance because it includes the most context and there's the most information. And there we see that it's about 70%, 70 F score. Comparing with the human baseline, we see that this approach significantly outperforms human performance. Some things to touch on in terms of individual differences. So we mentioned that there was increases in pitch and intensity in deceptive speech, but those differed across gender. Males increased their pitch while females increased their intensity when lying. For native language speakers, there was a feature for complexity, but since both native language English speakers and Mandarin Chinese speakers were both speaking English, you can't really take the complexity into account because it's harder for people who weren't born speaking English to produce English sentences. And then with neuroticism, that was also another feature for personality that, yes?
Could you explain what neuroticism is, please?
It's like neurotic, like being paranoid, things like that. So there are 5 personality factors: openness to experience, it's an acronym OCEAN, and they looked at those and didn't find many significant results for the other personality scores, but for neuroticism, there was a correlation. So to wrap up, some of the contributions of this work is that it provided extensive deception dialogue corpus that other people can use to study deception. They identified useful cues to deception, a framework for automatically classifying speech, and also looked at the ways that different people lie. And notable observations is that the quantity is more important than the quality of the data, because when more information was included, the performance improved, even though it may have been noisy. Context is crucial, as we saw, and the linguistic features perform better than the acoustic features, as shown here, with the acoustic set performing the worst. And what's left to do is to try integrating this with an existing technology, for example, with interviewing people remotely, or in an airline situation with kiosks, qualifications for a loan, or your technology, see where it takes you. So thanks for listening, and any questions? Yes.
Any surprises that you probably went into it thinking, it was probably due to these various factors?
Yes.
Anything that came out from the testing that says, wow, I didn't know that?
So one thing that surprised me was negation. That was an indicator of truth. So that was surprising. You think that people who lie, like, contradict themselves or, discount what they said previously, but it turns out that this was indicative of truth. Yes.
Well, what's surprising to me is that machines do better than humans at detecting deception. Was that surprising to you? It's surprising to me, actually.
Yeah, I mean, deception detection is a very hard problem, and it's hard to see, like, people, I guess, are biased by certain things, but the machines just learn from the features. So I think that there could be an advantage to using machines for detecting deception.
And also in that graph where you showed the result, was that additive, so each result was using the previous set of features?
No, it was individual. So just looking at that segment alone. So question chunks didn't include the IPU. Yeah,
Then would you have gotten better results by combining everything?
probably. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes.
I'm just wondering if you've seen this application unpublished by Adobe, Voco.
What's it called?
Voco, V-O-C-O.
No, I haven't heard of it.
I think they've been working on it for a while, and they call it the Photoshop for voice.
Cool.
So if you feed it,
Oh, yes.
yeah, if you feed it enough dialogue, you can pretty much write out what you want it to say, and then
Yeah.
read it as if it was another person.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
So I know even they mentioned that, I know for humans hearing it, we're like, that sounds exactly the way it should sound.
Mhm.
But even they were mentioning, like, well, if you run it through like a separate machine, it can detect that it's fake. But the fact that they're developing it and it's getting pretty far, at least from my point of view.
Yeah.
And you're saying machines can detect it like really quick. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on, like, when people are designing these things that can pretty much almost fake it enough for a human, and the implications of that to people.
Mhm.
And I don't know, just wondering what your thoughts on that. Like,
So I'd say that that's maybe a little bit different because it's more changing the speaker than the content. So this studied, like, the actual lies that people were saying and not pretending to be someone else. Yeah.
One more question.
Yes.
So you may have mentioned, but I may have missed it. The algorithms you use to try and detect,
Yes.
were they trained on the data from the corpus, or were they independent algorithms that are independent of the data?
So it was trained on the corpus data and then tested. So, like, cross-validation.
So could that be an explanation for why the machine outperformed you?
So it was the same data, basically. Like, they had the human judges there also as part of the experiment, and the baseline was based on their perception of those same examples. Yeah.
But in any case, there was not training data in the testing data. It was just from
Right.
the same corpus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, but it was them independent, yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
The human, they just had the speech to hear also, they weren't looking at the person too.
No, they actually saw the person.
Oh,
So-
they had additional.
Actually, no, sorry. They didn't. They were both in the same room, but there was an obstruction. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Can we grab you away?
And I did this research during my PhD. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Is the microphone on?
No?
Is this one on?
Hello.
Just look at that right in front of your mouth.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did this research during my PhD. Okay. Yeah, I did this research during my PhD in Trinity College Dublin. And as you all know, videos are one of the most versatile form of the content which we consume. And it's quite difficult to find the right video for ourselves. That's why a model is needed which can detect automatically engaging and non-engaging content according to user preference, which will be helpful in building video recommendation and video searching tools. Just to give you an system architecture of my approach, like what I'm doing, like there's a TED Talk, and I'm taking two kind of modalities. One is audio, one is subtitle, and the video. And from the audio, I am doing audio segmentation using Lime toolkit, and then extracting feature from those audio segments. Further, it is going to the self-organized map for clustering, and then creating a feature vector from the self-organizing map output. And then after generating, I am feedback, like what segments in a TED Talk are engaging and what are not, and also classifying overall the label of a TED Talk and presenting it to a user and a presenter. A bit of the state of the art, like previously, like some work on the TED Talk by Wernick. Like he proposed a metric for creating an optimal TED Talk using user rating, like or dislike. And the other studies also uses some heterogeneous data sources to create a recommender systems, and also analyze visual feature with the help of Haider Markov model for generating video preferences, user preferences. Just to give you a look, like why TED Talk is different. It's not simple like or dislike. When you watch a TED Talk, a user can provide a feedback in the 14 different words. As you can see, there are 14 different: okay, funny, informative, inspiring, like all these 14 words. And also, I am showing the rating of one TED Talk, like how it look like. Like the how many user perceive is okay, how many say is funny, how many say is inspiring. And then, for all the TED Talks, like the 1340 TED Talks, and I have seen like how many number of average count for each rating each video have. And if the number increase those rating, I'm considering is as beautiful, for example, or if the video has less number of counts than average, then I'm saying it's not beautiful. So that we have 14 different words, 14 different categories for each video, and we are classifying two class problem, either is yes or either is no. And just to give you a brief insight into a data set, this is a figure. You can see how many yes and how many no in all these 14 categories. Later, I'm just talking about some feature like close-up shots from a TED Talk, distant shots, and person not on a screen, and number of laughter and applauses from the subtitles, and clustering of speech segments using acoustic features. Here, acoustic feature means like extracted from OpenSmile, and the feature set is MO-based feature set of OpenSmile, which contains 988 acoustic features, like MFCCs, fundamental frequencies, and loudness. And here, like when I create extract the feature, I put in a classification, and I got these results. And here you can see like the visual plus paralinguistic feature, like visual plus laughter and applause, and then spoken expression features, which I am extracting using clustering of self-organizing map. And it's the fusion of both of them. And the number indicates is the F1 average F1 score of both classes, like yes and no, average of both classes F1 score. And here you can see we are getting way above blind guess for many categories. Like beautiful, we have 61%, but the blind guess of A weighted F score is 50%. Now, okay, we are able to classify each video, either is yes or no, engaging yes or no, but what's happening in a TED Talk, for getting a deep insight into it, I'm just giving you an example of how I'm creating a spoken expression. Like, as I told you, I'm segmenting the TED Talk, and then I'm doing a clustering of TED Talks. And there are a lot of segments, like more than 100K segments in 1340 video. When I cluster them, okay, this is a cluster size. I choose 10 for self-organizing mapping. And in the blue box, you can see each cluster, how many number of segments it has. And I am saying each cluster represents a spoken expression, because the segments in one cluster, they sound similar in terms of spoken expression. And I'm calculating a feature vector based on number of segments present in each cluster for each video. And when I did a statistical analysis on it, like we have 10 clusters, then I can see there are some clusters which are statistically different. Number of those segments present for each video are statistically different for yes and no. Like for, as I told you, we have 10 number of clusters, like cluster for beautiful, like we have 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. These cluster numbers are statistically different. And the 1, 4, 5, 7, 8 belongs to yes, like yes engaging, and 2 is no engaging. Okay, based on this, I try to separate engaging and non-engaging segment of a TED Talk. I am giving you some example of non-engaging segments. This video is classified as non-segment by the users. And we also predicted a non-fascinating. But let's see what's the...
We were not
this segment?
in opposition for that publicly. Through that and through human rights, we knew that it was... So Aisha, on 6 counts of conspiracy to... And the terrible shock, and when I saw it, and yet through... Before we knew each other's names or anything.
Okay, these are non-engaging segments. Now, what cluster, the cluster closer to that non-engaging segments, I can say is these segments are not non-engaging, but they're close to non-engaging segments. And I'm just playing some of them.
And a couple of weeks later, when Zacharias Moussaoui was...
girls, so that they don't accept to be married against their will, very young. Our children.
Je vais dans des écoles, je parle pour les jeunes filles musulmanes, pour pas se marier. Je vais aussi contre la violence, contre le...
Okay, there are the engaging segments. I'm gonna play. The applause is the most. And this is also applause. These are the engaging segments in a TED Talk for a user. And user I mean by online viewers. Yes. And because I have got only 2 segments which are engaging, then okay, what's happened? I'm gonna take those clusters which are close to engaging one, and I'm gonna play some of them for you.
My son, I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he's tortured. I was married when I was 14.
J'ai perdu un enfant quand j'avais 15 ans.
I lost a child when I was 15.
Un deuxième quand j'avais 16 ans.
A second child when I was 16.
Et donc l'histoire de Zacharias a fait déborder.
So the story with Zacharias was too.
Okay, now I'm gonna play maybe one more, maybe.
It's not against women. It's for us. For us.
And you know, okay, I got all the engaging and close to engaging segments. What I'm proposing, okay, if we collect all of them, then we can create a summary of a TED Talk. The TED Talk original duration was around 12 to 30 minutes, this thing. And I created a 2 minutes of summary so that we can provide a highlight to a user. He can watch a summary, and then he's gonna watch full video if he's interested. Let me gonna play a summary with you, which I created.
We are here.
I am the mother.
Quand elle est arrivée, j'ai demandé les droits de l'homme pour me faire contact comme moi.
And I saw in her eyes that she was... I was married when I was 14.
J'ai perdu un enfant quand j'avais 15 ans.
I lost a child when I was 15.
Un deuxième quand j'avais 16 ans.
A second child when I was 16.
Et donc l'histoire de Zacharias a fait déborder.
So the story with Zacharias was too...
Parce que mon fils il est enterré vivant.
Because my son...
Je sais qu'il a pleuré pour son fils.
I know she really cried for her son.
Elle sait où il est.
But she knows where he is.
Moi, mon fils, Je ne sais pas si il est torturé, je ne sais pas s'il est vivant, je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qu'il est devenu, mon fils.
My son, I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he's tortured. I don't.
Et c'est pour ça que j'ai décidé, la souffrance elle sera positive pour les autres.
So that's why I decided to tell my story, so that my suffering is something positive for other,
Pour toutes les femmes, pour toutes les mères vies.
for all the women.
On peut redonner quelque chose, on peut changer quelque chose.
You can give back. You
C'est à nous
can
de le faire, les
change.
femmes.
It's up to us,
Parce qu'on est
women,
des femmes.
because we are
Et
women,
parce qu'on aime nos enfants.
because we.
Et faire quelque chose ensemble pour nous.
It's
pour
not
nos
against
enfants.
women. It's for us. For us.
Terrorisme.
I talk against violence, against terrorism. I go to schools to talk to young.
Et si je peux sauver une fille ou deux de ce mariage horrible, cette violence à l'intérieur de... Je me rappelle de moi, c'est une gloire malgré que je suis...
And then realizing, hey, this wasn't so hard. Who else can I meet that I don't know, or that I'm do you have a couple of words to for conclusion?
And that's around 2 minutes. And that's around 2 minutes of summary of a video, and conclusion like we can detect engagement using characteristics of speech, and it's a step towards generating feedback in the form of video chunks for presenters, so that they will know the parts of video which are engaging or not, or presenter or the user both can get the benefit from this. And future work find the relationship of gestures and facial expression with the engagement level of a talk. And other possible line of future work is to perform audio and video summarization based on the current study. And we need to run perception tests to see like how accurate it is. That's all. Thank you very much.
We're over, but I'm still going to take a couple of questions if there are any. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fasih.
Welcome.